What would you say is the like difference between being a human and being a god? Because I know that word can pop up and people can take that word the way they take that word, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So I can't, can you elaborate on when you say God, what does that
Yeah.
mean for the human being?
So, I mean, it can have very many different meanings on different levels, depending on how you're looking at it. So technically everything is God. Like if you really want to get down to the bare truth of it, all that is God. Like when the Christians say in the Bible, I don't know what the words are exactly, but it's something along the lines is that all is God. All that there is God. There's nothing else but God. So that concept is true. There's nothing that isn't God. So in that way, we are already all gods. But there is the archetype of God, the one that creates, the one that knows all. Like take the three characteristics that you find in a lot of holy books: um, omnipotence, omniscience, and omnipresence. So omnipotence meaning being all powerful. You can create and destroy anything that there is. Omnipresence meaning that you are everywhere all at once and you are always there and you always will be there. And omniscience is all knowing. You have all knowledge that could ever be. And you are capable of understanding anything that could ever be because you tune in to the very fabric of the universe itself in the sense that you know how things operate. So you can extrapolate and imagine anything that could ever be. So therefore, you contain all knowledge within yourself and you're not limited to your single form. So you can branch out beyond your own thought patterns. So the way that manifests in a human form is that you begin to practice um, manipulating energy the same way Jesus did, in that he turned water to wine or was able to walk on water. He was practicing manipulating energy. Like we manipulate energy when we do anything. If I just push this microphone, I'm manipulating energy. But there's a certain limit to as to what I think I can do or what regular people feel they can do. Most people think that they can only just push the microphone with their finger. But if you practice more and more and understand yourself more and more thoroughly, you can move the microphone with your mind. So that's moving to godhood in the sense that you can manipulate energy, you can create and destroy, not energy itself, but forms of energy. Like this is energy in a form of a microphone. I could destroy that microphone with my mind had I the faith to do so. But the energy itself would just dissipate and take other form. So there's no destroying energy. There's only disentangling it. So we entangle energy and we destroy and we disentangle energy, but we can't neither create nor destroy it. So that's a level of godhood that you can experience in a human form once you recognize your power. And then the omniscience can also be there in the sense that you can go beyond your regular thought pattern and you can tune into the infinite field of intelligence that is at the core or at the foundation of all beingness, of all essence. So it's kind of like tuning into the 0 point radio signal. You know, there's channel 98.5, and on 98.5, there's a certain person talking or there's a certain song playing. But at the 0 point radio level, all radio exists. So you could just go into that space and you can just say, what do I want to hear? What do I want to know? And it can be made available to you. We all have that opportunity.
But yeah, we all have the potential. And I would say that I have experienced this for myself, but people don't think that it's possible. Therefore, in their reality, it's not possible. It will never be
Yes.
possible. And
Well, it won't until they start to see it that it is.
I think it goes back to what I said about internal language and really trying to find that language that everyone communicates with, that zero frequency. And because of the systems in place, because of the mentality society has instilled in the human mind, people just don't think like, that stuff is real, even though the CIA, FBI like investigates and has all these documents already like for public knowledge.
Yeah.
After that came out, people still like said, okay, but the disconnection comes from like knowing it as information and being it as a being. And I think, what if not everyone is supposed to access that? Because in a way it wouldn't be balanced.
Yeah, well, I mean, that I would agree with that. The language supposed to, I might alter a little bit just because there's nothing that's supposed to be anything. But if I mean, all the lifetimes you and I experienced before this and many lifetimes that are occurring on this planet right now, many of them will go to their deathbed having never realized this, but they serve a purpose in the grand scheme of things. They play a role in the divine play. So yeah, not every individual being, individual body and thought pattern construction and ego comes to that realization in every lifetime. But again, that's not who they truly are. They're not limited to that lifetime. You're not only Elijah. This is just the role you're playing right now. You came into this world and you put on the hat that said Elijah, but truthfully, you're not anyone. You're just that essence. So everybody, actually, let more accurate say maybe something like every soul has the destiny to want to return to that understanding. So regardless of whether or not they figured out now, like right now, there's in this last 5 minutes, there's probably been thousands of people who die without that knowledge, without that understanding. So, but that doesn't mean that they won't understand it in their next lifetime or their next one after that. So every soul, every individual experiencer experiences it somewhere along the line of their spiritual evolution. So yeah, not everybody figures it out. Not everybody sees it, but technically they do, because they're not limited to their body that they're inhabiting right now. It's just they're wearing a costume. But the essence, the person that is wearing the costume will figure it out once they put on the right costume.
I was just thinking about spiritual evolution. And I used to have these ideas that if society would be on the same page of spiritual awareness, or that we're not just a body, but we're also a spirit in a body. We're also energy and not just the physical flesh. It's weird because as human beings, we think, we're conscious, we have that power to change ourselves, to self-reflect and change ourselves. So in a way, we can predict that if everyone did this, then I would say life for the human being would be more genuine, would be more fruitful, because people wouldn't have to experience the negativity that comes with a thinking mind, the self-doubt, the self-hatred, that all comes from not knowing yourself, the ignorance.
Yeah.
But I also feel like when going back to human beings accessing a God-like consciousness, using their essence to manipulate reality, I feel like when human beings do that, it's intentful. Therefore, it's almost out of flow. And I think the people that are in power now, and the people who have been in power, who've created the system, they were in that God-like mentality that I'm going to use my essence to manipulate the world and society. And they did. And I feel as if when people are born into that system, it's almost like their potential is blocked off because they live in that system that was established by these gods. They're not living in the natural system of the one or the God or the universe, but this man God that has created this man society. They haven't returned to nature and therefore haven't returned to the true God. And I feel like to really make a change for all human beings, that man God has to be eradicated so that human beings as we know them all return to flow, even in their individual expressions.
Yes.
So yeah, I really agree when you said that everything serves a purpose, even people that don't reach their potential and they pass in this lifetime. It serves for maybe a next lifetime or a previous lifetime. But I also believe that if those systems weren't in place, people wouldn't have to experience that at all, because their bodies would just be healthier. Their mind and energy would be healthier. It would be pure. It would be more natural. And I really believe it's something a person has to choose intently. They're like, they have to choose it because they chose to live in the man God society. They chose to live in this unnatural world. And that's why they will never reach their potential, because just like you sign your book, you sign your name in the devil's book, you sign your energy away when you live in their system, when you don't live in nature, because you're not living in your truest essence, the human being as an animal, but rather than this God character you're trying to put on that drives fancy cars, that has a pension. Like, none of that is real. All those are fabrications of the human mind, of human society, products of human civilization. But there's life before human civilization, and that's more natural.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think a really important distinction to make is that between what we consider gods, plural, and God. So that's, again, why it helps to have other words for this. Like I typically go with the word source, because it's just this neutral energy. It's just the energy that builds all and creates all and destroys all. It's all that is. So the idea of gods is kind of like they just become the ones that have just learned to manipulate the energy. Kind of like how in, what is it, Greek mythology or Roman mythology, you have like Zeus and people like that, right? So they were gods. So those were relative gods. They were gods relative to the common people. The common people couldn't cast lightning down from the sky. Zeus could. You know what I mean? So the common people couldn't turn water into wine. Jesus could. So these types of things, relative to the human experience, those people are considered gods because they can do what people consider miraculous, because it's something beyond their understanding. So the gods are those that commit miracles. Yeah. Something miraculous. Yeah, go ahead.
In the same way that the rich and powerful, they cast lightning, but with money.
Yeah.
And they change systems and millions of lives by just signing papers and throwing money.
Yeah.
Like Zeus throwing a lightning bolt. And and I would say that was important for me to interject, because that's what we mean when we say man God.
Yeah.
This mentality of God.
Yeah.
That's why they built this system, so they control the energy. But the thing is, they made it seem like we don't have energy, we have money.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And by doing it through that mechanism, they are disrupting the flow. It's like the flow is this river, and then those who take the or subscribe to the idea of the man god, so to speak, and want to become the man god, they're within the river and they're building like straight lines, and that makes the river go all over the place, and it disrupts the river, and they dam off the river completely eventually once they've built so many structures. And then the structures serve them because they live within the structure. But there is this constant river that's still flowing all around them. And eventually, over time, that structure will erode. Structure in and of itself cannot last without the flow. The flow will break through the dam eventually. And that's what's happening on a global scale right now. They've built structures, they've built dams by becoming men gods. And they're trying to control the energy. They're trying to like pinch off the flow so they can only have as much as they want and direct it in the way that they want to go. And that, maybe they know this, maybe they don't, maybe some, maybe don't, but that is inherently unsustainable. The more they try to manipulate nature and dominate nature, the more nature builds energy up out around that structure that they're
trying to do.
Exactly. And eventually the water becomes too much. It builds too high. The dam will break. No dam will last forever with the constant flow of energy of any kind. So this whole structure of money, of separating the man and saying, you know, I'm a god because I can sign my name and a whole country can be destroyed. Like that's the level of power that they have. But that level of power is unsustainable because it's not within the flow. Eventually, the energy that they are creating by destroying countries will come back around and destroy them. As it is now, we're starting to realize that politicians and people that create wars and blow up places all over the world for their own gain, they're not on our side. Not only not on their own country side, but they're not on the side of humanity. So we're rising above that. And the people that tune into their love and to their truth are becoming that water that is about to break through the dam that has created that structure that separated the whole world to begin with. So
that's a cool analogy.
So it's really important to make that distinction between what we consider gods and God itself. So it's probably better to use a word like source, or all that is, or the Atman, or I don't know, all kinds of different faiths have different words for it. But yeah, there's gods in mythology. Yeah, source works for me. That's the one I usually tend to go to because it's neutral. So yeah, gods, those people like Zeus and whatever, whether or not they exist, it doesn't matter. But as an archetype, Zeus learned how to manipulate natural energy, but he did it for his own gain. You know what I mean? He still did it to serve himself and his own family. I don't know that mythology very much, so I could be wrong about that even. But either way, he was still a separate man. He wasn't doing it to enlighten and liberate all beings on planet Earth. You know what I mean? He was doing it for some reason that he had a particular intent. So though he was in tune with a part of the flow, he still was dominated by his structure. His structure was the dominating force. And he was just manipulating the flow in the ways that he wanted to make it go. He was still creating dams. He was still creating canals in order to say, water go this way, water go that way. But once we can all come together and create structure that is built by the flow itself. And the analogy I use for that is kind of how there's these people, I think I don't know where exactly, I remember seeing this, but I don't know where. I think it was in Africa. Some tribesmen found a way to work with the trees and the plants to manipulate them into growing bridges. Have you ever seen this?
No, I haven't.
It's remarkable. So yeah, some tribesmen, they study the plants in their environment and the trees in their environment. Like they'll have like a lot of vines and things like that, and they could just like create structure to manipulate the tree to grow that way. And then over time, they would take away the structure, and the trees will have built a bridge across a waterway, and then there's no actual bridge left. It's not like it's made out of wood that was cut down. They just manipulate the trees to grow that way. And on the other side of the water, they manipulate the trees to grow that way. And then they entangle and become this strong structure that is made out of actual nature. It's not like they took the tree, chopped it up, made 2x4. They actually used the tree and worked with the tree. They manipulated the flow to create structure that is built out of the flow itself, rather than taking the flow, destroying it, and making it something else, like maybe a steel beam or a 2x4.
Which all erode and decay, but a tree is a living thing. It will continuously grow and become more.
Exactly. So grateful that you brought up that point, because that wasn't in my mind, but that's so fucking true. That's the idea, is that bridge will last for as long as there's energy and life force in those vines. And then you can always manipulate new vines as some vines start to die. And you can just work with the nature, have nature create structure for itself, because nature does create structure for itself. You need to have the Fibonacci sequence of straight lines and curvy lines. Otherwise, it's just chaos or just lifeless structure. So to use both and manipulate both in a way that serves itself and perpetuates itself, you can create systems in every element and in every level of the natural world, that we don't have to destroy nature in order to create structure, in order to build something that we want. We can make natural dams. We can make natural structures. We can have structure that is made out of the flow rather than disrupting the flow, which is what we've been doing for millennia.
Right. Wow.